All right, everyone, what's good? Welcome back to the Brawn and Brains podcast. We are now on our third episode of the education series, and today we are going to be talking about probably the most overlooked thing in bodybuilding and fitness, which is lifestyle. And the reason why I say that it's very, very overlooked is because, fitness and bodybuilding and hypertrophy is a pretty simple endeavor. I think we probably got that point across in the last two episodes of the education series. If we train hard and get strong and eat according to our needs with, something as basic as energy balance, we can make a pretty good amount of progress towards our goal. But with that being said, Ben, I'm sure you'll agree that more often than not, a lot of people come to us saying, yo, I'm doing everything right. I'm training hard. I'm eating well. I'm not making the progress I think I should be. What gives? And the answer to that is lifestyle, because this is where we get into the idea of simplicity versus ease. And though these endeavors might be simple, controlling all those other little variables, which really is just lifestyle, to actually facilitate those is possibly easier said than done. And, meeting these things on a consistent basis can potentially get a little harder, but that's what we're kind of going to delve into today.
Yeah. And, you're right. You say simplicity versus ease, and it's very simple to say, yeah, you should probably go to bed at this time and wake up this time every single day. Sounds pretty simple. But it's actually this idea of initially, it probably will require quite a bit of effort to sort of rearrange and change your lifestyle. So this is where I know, particularly with my own clients, it's to make things easier and to make change easier, because remember, change isn't necessarily easy. It's about changing one thing at a time, not trying to change everything at once. And that's really key. So if you are going to change your lifestyle for the better and to better facilitate results, then don't try to change everything at once. And I think a great area to always start, however, is with your sleep. If you improve your sleep, you pretty much are guaranteed to improve everything else. I can literally, the effects it has on stress management, on digestion, on energy levels, on quality of life, on your ability to perform, on cognitive function, on actual body composition as well. It has a massive influence over everything. Sleep is like this ultimate recovery state. You want good sleep. And so that is always the first place I would, look to change with someone, for certain. So let's talk about what we can do, the small lifestyle changes we can make to improve our sleep. Well, I've already kind of touched on the first one, and that is very, very simply to make sure you have consistent sleep and wake times. So we've touched on this in the past when we talked about, the benefits of daylight, but the reason for this is because basically, obviously you have your circadian rhythm, and that is, again, that internal regulation that your body has. So naturally you will want to fall asleep at a certain time, and naturally you will wake up at a certain time. But, first question, say to yourself, is like, if you find that straight away that doesn't register with you, you seem to wake up different times every day, you naturally feel tired different times, then straight away that tells us that, you don't have a good routine in place, that, your circadian rhythm is a bit out of whack, so to speak. So the first thing is, like I say, is, let's start by looking at, making consistent sleep and wake times. So to do that, you might have to be a bit strict with yourself first. You might say, okay, I'm going to, set my sleep time for 11 or 10. Let's say 10. So you probably, at the very least, about 9, want to start to get ready for bed, start to, prime yourself to go to sleep. That way, by, you get to 10, you are ready to go to sleep. Again, at first, that might be a bit difficult because you might not feel tired at first. You might not want to go to sleep first, but if you start to at least get into that routine, into that rhythm, into that structure, it's going to be a lot easier to, try to go to sleep for 10. The next thing is your wake time. So again, this might require, say, an alarm at first. So you get used to waking up at that time, and don't hit the snooze button. That's the key thing, is just get straight up. Again, that's going to take effort at first, but over time that will become habit, and therefore actually be less effort. But what will start to happen is your body will start to naturally, over time, fall asleep or start to get tired at this, this sleep time that you set. and you'll naturally wake up at this wake time that you set, to the point where you probably won't even need an alarm anymore. So that's the very first simple habit. Now, again, to really help facilitate that, the next thing I would actually look at is the first thing in the morning. So, you've set this, I've talked about, obviously, setting a routine to help you, gear up to go to sleep at this time you've set. But the first place I would look is the morning. So, as I said, maybe you have to set that alarm at first. So let's say it was 7. So you set an alarm for 7, you're getting up. How can we help facilitate that becoming our natural wake-up time? Well, get exposed to light. First thing, get exposed to daylight first thing. Again, that daylight is that signal message that tells your body to start to wake up for the day. And again, it sets that circadian rhythm. Again, like I said before, circadian rhythm very much dictates when you naturally fall asleep, when you naturally wake up. So the very first thing in the morning is get exposed to daylight. That's literally the first place I would start. I don't know if you want to add anything to that first before we talk about other factors for sleep.
Yeah, well, I think a good way to kind of go about it almost as kind of a bit of a content of what this will kind of encompass. I think when it comes to sleep, which as you very rightly mentioned, is probably the first thing we should delve into in terms of lifestyle in general, is, I guess, to begin with, we can already kind of look at breaking this down into like sleep hygiene, nutrition, and how that affects sleep and kind of other things. So I guess a good way, kind of quickly something worth pointing out, is when we talk about sleep hygiene, is we're basically talking about kind of all things, routine and stuff surrounding sleep. So things sort of like daylight, and even things which actually are quite literally hygiene related, because I think one point worth bringing up is even like the environment in which you sleep is quite important. And I think for students who are watching this, maybe particularly important, because you might be staying in some like more affordable housing and stuff. So I think particularly with places where students live, things like mold is maybe a bit more commonplace, and that can have impacts on, well, all across the board. It can have impacts on your health and stuff, but can have impacts on sleep in terms of kind of immune responses and congestion and stuff. That's quite a common one, which can kind of impact your sleep. Same thing applies for dust and people staying in maybe less clean environments, particularly the students out there. I've been there. I know what you're up to and what your places look like. So yeah, make sure your environment is actually good for sleep. These things around sleep hygiene are really kind of the low-hanging fruits that, even though, as you said, Ben, you might have to be a bit more kind of disciplined with yourself in the way that you make these things happen. These are really some very, potentially easy things to work into your life that will have a massive impact. And when we consider kind of the ratio of effort that it takes versus the reward that you'll get from it, these are really the things that you want to be implementing. So consistent sleep times is a real low-hanging fruit. Get that one sorted out. Obviously, again, considering the impact of daylight, and hopefully this is already starting to kind of fit together like a bigger picture if you saw our Fitbit on daylight and stuff.
Yeah.
And then things like the environment in which you sleep, and ensuring that it is actually clean. You've got clean bed sheets, so your room isn't very dusty, or you haven't got like mold and stuff. And then I guess as an extension of that, also ensuring that your room is sufficiently dark and quiet as well. Again, another one maybe more so for students. If you're living in the city and stuff, can definitely be a lot of noise about, and maybe the setup for your room, maybe your landlord has quite crappy blinds and stuff. So yeah, considering your environment and where you sleep is also very important when it comes to sleep quality.
Yep. So again, a few things to touch on there. So obviously, already talked about consistent sleep and wake times, but the idea is that obviously it should be the same time every single night and every single morning, including the weekend.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing I do want to say, especially when you bring up students, is like, okay, we also have to be realistic. Like, if you're going to bed at 10 every single night and waking up at 7 every single morning on a weekday, ideally, you would do that on the weekends, but is that really going to be the case? Probably not. So what I will say is like, yeah, if you want to say go to bed a little bit later on the weekend and wake up a little bit later, that's probably going to be okay. Just don't make it dramatically later. And if you do, accept the fact that what you essentially are doing is setting yourself up for a version of jet lag as you move into the week. So if you've got drastically different sleep and wake times on the weekend versus the week, again, you're starting that week with essentially what is jet lag, because you're getting behind, your body's getting out of whack, your body's getting out of routine. Apply that every single week, and like, your first few days of that week it's almost becoming a write-off. Like you've in terms of, like, again, productivity, whether you're a student or you work, it's the quality of your work is going to go down. In terms of performance, that's going to go down. In terms of cognitive function, that's going to go down, all simply because you went to bed dramatically late on a weekend and woke up dramatically later.
I like to quickly interrupt there, and one thing which I think is really important to touch on is when you said, doing this every week, because I think that important in itself is important to consider, because these are habits, and even when we go back to kind of things like circadian rhythm and kind of the physiological impacts of this stuff, also understand that these habits is what your body kind of starts to regulate itself around. So even though we are saying these things and this will be good for you, this will be good for you, also understand, like, one late night once in a blue moon ain't going to send your circadian rhythm out of whack. But as Ben said, if you are kind of getting into this habit of, like, every week, those weekdays being, almost one sleep pattern, and then the weekend, a super late night and then a lie-in, if you're doing that week on week on week, then that can potentially start to actually have a bit more of an impact as a habit. And, you start to regulate yourself a bit more around that. But that's just one worth touching on, because what we're not saying is, you can never have another late night again. No, that's also not the case.
Yeah. And that's important to understand. Like, so what we you have to be realistic. So again, can you have late nights from time to time? Sure, because we all do that. We all, in fact, to us last night I had quite a late night, I won't lie. But again, just looking at the weekend, you might want to stay up a little bit later, because that's just it's just what people do. So if you're say throughout the week your bedtime was 10, then on a weekend, it's probably all right if you want to go to sleep as late as 11. That's absolutely fine. Like, that sort of difference isn't going to make or break anything. But the main point is your sleep and wake time should be pretty goddamn consistent every single day, including the weekend. But as I said, at first it's going to take a bit of discipline, a bit of effort to get into that routine. But over time, that's when you'll naturally start to feel sleepy and when you'll naturally wake up. So over time, it'll become less effort, and it will become simple. It will become easy, and you'll feel, I promise you, I hear this all the time, I promise you'll feel so much better for it. And because you feel much better for it, that's when things like quality of life can start to improve very nicely. But before we start to get down that avenue, obviously there's a lot to cover on sleep first. So you've already started to talk about sleep hygiene, and again, one of those things is consistent sleep and wake times. You talked on actual hygiene and environment itself. So obviously something as simple as taking a shower before bed, making sure you're clean before bed, actually does make a difference. But obviously, don't get too caught up in the word hygiene, because there's a lot more to sleep hygiene than actual hygiene. You're talking about environment there. So your visual and your sound environment matters a lot. So again, if you live in the city, then perhaps investing in a good eye mask and and earplugs is probably a good idea. Again, just to help drown out the sound. Something like, you can go on Spotify and find something like a white noise sound that helps to drown out background noise as well. So that's actually really useful, and that's been shown to improve sleep quality. So in terms of the eye mask, a good brand is Manta. I can't remember if it's Manta or Manta.
Manta.
We'll link it below, because that is a very good eye mask. It's probably the best I've ever used, without a doubt.
Yeah, it was quite a game changer. Sadly, not sponsored.
Sadly not. You could potentially use blackout blinds. The only thing I don't like about blackout blinds is that when you wake up in the morning and things are still dark, it's not the nicest. It can still make you feel a bit sleepy. And again, you're missing out on some of the light in the morning, even if it's just shining through your window. Although I don't count that as light exposure. It still helps with waking you up a little bit. So blackout blinds, yes, are good, but also have their downfall in that sense as well. So I prefer people to go for an eye mask. Now, people will then go, well, if you've got an eye mask on, surely if it's pitch black, you've got an eye mask on, surely, it doesn't matter about the light anyway, because your eyes won't be getting that light. Well, this is going to be probably news to a lot of people, but your skin has light receptors as well. So yes, even if you're using a good eye mask, which is blocking out the light that's coming through the window in the morning, for example, your skin will still pick up that, and that's what will help to wake you up. So again, that's why you've got the benefit of an eye mask, because it will help with, keep things dark. But by not using a blackout blind, you'll still get that light onto your skin, which will help to wake you up. So yeah, an eye mask and earplugs are a good option for both your visual and your sound environment. But again, in terms of sleep hygiene, then we have to look at light exposure, as we've already started to touch on. We have to look at your actual meal times around your sleep time. We have to look at things like your caffeine intake, your alcohol intake as well.
Yeah, I was going to touch
so
on drugs in a minute.
You want, sorry?
Yeah, I was going to touch on drugs in a minute.
Yeah, so there's a few things to cover, but we'll start with light, because again, there's a big one. So you should, as we've touched on in the past, and we'll not go too deep into this because we've talked about it plenty in a different Fitbit, but you should be getting plenty of daylight throughout the day. Now, obviously, earlier I already touched on the fact that first thing in the morning you should get some daylight exposure, but throughout the day you should also get that daylight exposure. Again, because that helps with this circadian rhythm, but it also helps with the buildup of melatonin. And melatonin is a primary antioxidant that basically helps you to fall asleep at night. So what happens essentially is when you get this light exposure, again, it sets that circadian rhythm, but it builds up this melatonin. And then when that light exposure goes, or when it gets dark, that's when the melatonin starts to get released. And that's when you start to, feel sleepy, fall asleep. Modern day world, that is a bit of a problem, because there is now a lot of technology around. There's a lot of blue light, or fake blue light, you could say, from all the technology. So if you're up at night, just room lights, or watching TV on your phone, that is this light signal that's still telling you to be awake, be up. Your body still thinks it's daytime, essentially, because blue light is most prevalent around midday. Your body still thinks it's midday. Midday is when you are most awake. It's when the sharpest. You can kind of already guess how that's going to be a problem for sleep quality. You want to jump in there, so that you...
Yeah, I was going to say, well, one thing which I guess we didn't really touch on quite as much in the Fitbit, which maybe is worth kind of quickly mentioning now, is actually how this whole light thing works. Because in the Fitbit, well, obviously, I guess with it being, much shorter anyway, we kind of just focused on, why daylight exposure is important, how we can potentially make use of our habits to, facilitate getting more light in at the right time. But I guess now is maybe actually a good time to kind of mention like the origin of these ideas. So basically, obviously, basic physics, you have, a spectrum of colors that you can get in light. Earlier in the day and later in the day, you're going to have naturally more red light and kind of less intense light.
Well.
And
infrared as well.
Red
and near infrared.
Yeah. And then around midday, you're going to get much more intense light, much more blue light. So as you were saying, Ben, about kind of the whole, almost like tricking your body into still being awake because it thinks it's midday, that's basically what happens, because naturally, you have these different spectrums of light at different times of the day, and that's how it kind of affects your body's physiological clock, aka the circadian rhythm. I'll let you kind of bounce back into it.
And like I say, it also stops this release of melatonin as well, which is, again, its primary antioxidant. Now, we will get onto a bit why, although that is definitely problematic, and it 100% is, it's, people will come back with the argument, well, there's plenty of people who, don't get any daylight and stare at the phone all night and still go to sleep at night. There is a different way in which you fall asleep, which is actually has a bigger effect on you than what your circadian rhythm does and than what the light exposure does. But we'll talk about light exposure first, because you have to understand there are a lot of different benefits to getting light. So as we've touched on, so just getting back to what we were saying, actually, so obviously staring at your phone, looking at you, watching TV, and the room lights are all giving you this blue light signal, which is telling your body to be awake at night. So this is where you might have heard of the infamous blue light blocking glasses, which somewhere here I was going to put them on, but I don't know where they are. Yeah, Stick them on.
Yeah, they're proper trendy, very, very fashionable.
You might have seen that. You might have seen that before. So obviously, it's in the name. The idea of the blue light blocking glasses is to help block blue light from getting into your eyes.
And there's some good research done on them as well, in terms of kind of the whole melatonin thing and everything. So
That's really useful to use at night. So, but we have to then refer back to what I said earlier, which is the fact that the skin also has light receptors. So yes, blocking the light from getting to your eyes is a good idea. But if you're still watching TV, you still got the room light on, that's still, skin's still getting exposed to that. So yes, we can set using the blue light blocking glasses, and you want to do that as about a minimum 2 hours before you plan to go to sleep. But we also, again, like I say, have to realize that that by itself probably isn't enough if we want, really good quality sleep. So what I like to do with my clients is also set a technology turn-off time, which is typically, again, about an hour before they would plan on going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's a really good opportunity for you to turn off technology, shut down for the night and go read a book or go journal or go plan your next day, something like you make use of that time. Do stuff that, it's probably going to help you wind down in the first place. A lot of my clients just like to read the books in those times. It's a great opportunity because sometimes people say, well, I don't really have, I don't have the time to read a book anymore. There you go. You've just created an hour in which you now can go read a book. You're starting to wind down. You're not getting exposed to this blue light. And, sleep quality is going to improve because of that. So, yeah, get exposed to light throughout the day. Use blue light blocking glasses at night. And then at least an hour before bed, probably turn off all technology. And then you're not getting any of that blue light exposure at all. And then, like I say, that is going to help with you to wind down and actually fall asleep and have this melatonin release. Now, referring back to what I said before about how technically you can still fall asleep, well, obviously you do still fall asleep even if you have all these bad habits in place. It's because obviously circadian rhythm helps you to fall asleep, but you also have this thing called sleep pressure. And so what sleep pressure is, and that's a more dominant form of a more dominant way to fall asleep, essentially. Like, again, you can be exposed to all the blue light you want, but sleep pressure will make you fall asleep eventually. And what that is basically it's just this buildup of energy that you can essentially just think about as, it's buildup of energy which you need to recover from. It's pretty much as simple as that. I'm trying to think which video we slightly covered this in. Well, it might be in the fundamentals of nutrition where we talked about like the likes of magnesium helps with this adenosine buildup. Because
I think that might have actually been one of the stress management ones.
No, in the stress management, we talked about the magnesium con clearance. We didn't talk about it with the adenosine buildup. I think it might be in the fundamentals of nutrition. Okay. But again, so basically what happens is, and again, this is going to segue really nicely, so bear with me. What happens is essentially you obviously expend energy, which is in the form of ATP or adenosine triphosphate. And by doing that, you get this buildup of adenosine. When you get this buildup of adenosine over the day, that creates a sleep pressure, which makes you fall asleep. Again, side note, magnesium is what you call a cofactor, so it helps your body to build up that adenosine. But this is where we can segue nicely onto the next factor of sleep hygiene, which is things like caffeine. So caffeine, essentially the way caffeine works is it stops this buildup of adenosine. So if you are blocking this buildup of adenosine, you're stopping the sleep pressure, and therefore, again, that's going to stop your ability to fall asleep as well, and it's going to affect sleep quality. So caffeine takes about 6 to 8 hours to clear out of your system completely. So the next sort of good habit or sleep hygiene habit we could put into place is looking at whatever time you've planned to go to sleep, again, because you've probably set a time now which you want to go to sleep at every single night. Take off about 6 to 8 hours before that, and that's when you want to cut off your caffeine. Anything you want to add to that again before we sort of keep?
I got slightly distracted because of the sirens, so I apologize if anyone heard sirens.
I didn't hear it, to be fair.
Oh, did you not? Oh,
no,
brilliant!
No.
I quickly muted my mic because I thought, oh no, struggles of living in the city centre. I don't know if you mentioned the half-life.
I literally just said about 6 to 8 hours.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know you said to cut it out around that time. I couldn't remember if you mentioned the half-life or not. So yeah, I think that covers caffeine nicely. And I think kind of on that note of kind of drugs, I think that probably segues nicely into talk about kind of other things that can have an impact on your sleep quality and stuff. And I think that then kind of leads quite nicely into then kind of evening routine, maybe to kind of finish off sleep hygiene, and kind of looking at kind of generally, I guess, when also looking at these drugs, kind of leaning more sympathetic and kind of the impacts of that, and kind of that idea of winding down in the evening and evening routine, stuff like that. So I guess to follow up from that nicely, obviously caffeine is just one of the many kind of drugs which can have an impact on your sleep. Obviously, other common ones include alcohol and cannabis, both very common, I guess. Well, obviously a lot of bodybuilders are known for smoking cannabis, and obviously a lot of students drink quite regularly. So I think those are probably the main ones to kind of touch on when it comes to kind of impact on sleep. Alcohol obviously is known to kind of have a poor impact on sleep quality. And again, that's not to say you can't drink, but understand that the more of that you do, the worse impact you're having on your sleep. And on that note, you probably could have a way with having a tiny bit of alcohol each night, but again, it's that idea of especially if you overdo it, expect that to have some sort of ramification on your sleep. And then same kind of deal with weed. And even though it may make you tired, I guess we can even kind of drag kind of sedatives into this in general, and sleep pills and stuff, because I think even though that maybe is one to kind of touch on in like sleep supplementation and stuff, maybe that's kind of a good one to drag in here anyway. And even though some substances may make you feel tired and sleepy, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're causing you to fall asleep or having a good effect on your sleep quality, because understand that in terms of kind of biochemistry and the pathways in your body that facilitate sleep, that this is where we get into the idea of kind of nutrition and potentially supplementation to aid with better sleep, because we're feeding these pathways with what they need. Things like cannabis or things like sedatives and sleeping pills, although they may make you feel sleepy in the way that they act on your body, they are not actually supporting these pathways, and therefore aren't actually necessarily going to give you a better quality sleep. There could be a tiny bit of argument to say if something like potentially like weed relaxes you and kind of helps maybe put you in more of a parasympathetic state and stuff, then could that potentially kind of overwrite the idea of not quite as deep sleep and stuff? Possibly, because I mean I'll happily admit that I sleep much better after a doobie. But it is kind of also known that I guess with that being said, again, it's the idea of kind of habits and the idea of once in a blue moon versus, I guess, if you're kind of a chronic stoner. It's a bit of a different story when it comes to sleep quality. So yeah, just worth bearing in mind the ideas of sleep pathways and how we can actually improve sleep quality versus stuff that we take, which in terms of alcohol and caffeine is just pretty much a straight no, but maybe kind of those more gray areas where you may kind of think like, oh, sleeping pills, sleep, yeah, and oh, weed makes me tired, cool, sleep isn't necessarily that simple.
Yeah, and there's a huge difference between your ability to fall asleep and actual sleep quality as well. Now, your ability to fall asleep is really, really important, but sleep quality, essentially, realistically, what sleep quality refers to is your ability to move through the different cycles of sleep. All those things you touched on there actually inhibit. So weed inhibits your ability to move into deep sleep. Alcohol inhibits your ability to move into deep sleep. Of course, enough alcohol. The annoying thing about alcohol is that essentially, yes, you could have some, but the point in which you can start to cause issues is pretty much the point where you start to feel it. That's kind of the annoying thing. It's like, so unless you and sometimes it's nice to have a nice cold beer on a hot day. So sometimes the taste in that sense is quite nice. But unless you really like the taste of alcohol, which again, to be fair, some people do, like in a nice glass of wine, then is there really a point in drinking just a little bit if you're not going to get even just a little bit of a buzz off it? Is there a point unless you really do like the taste? So again, the main point there is that yes, alcohol you can have some, but if you start to feel it, that's when you've had too much, essentially. And that is almost the annoying thing, because again, like I said, most people probably do drink it to feel something. Again, like you said, weed, yes, it might make you feel tired and sleepy, but it's not going to move you through these deeper stages of sleep. And again, that's really, really critical to understand. Yes, like I said, that maybe there's an argument for it helping you to calm down, but I would say that isn't enough, because again, if you're not moving through these deeper stages of sleep, then you're automatically going to be in a much higher sympathetic state the following day anyway. So over the long term, it's going to be a lot worse. So yeah, sleep quality essentially refers to moving through these different stages of sleep, and that's really, really important. Another one is, I see this all the time. People like sort of share it as sort of a meme, but like basically people waking up to have a drink throughout the night. If you're waking up to have a drink throughout the night, that's not good sleep quality. That is a sign right there that, you know, again, something is going wrong.
Yeah.
You probably want to look at your hydration status for that in the first place. So maybe, you know, making sure, again, because most people don't have enough electrolytes, but probably where you need to look for that, if that is you, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, again, you probably are dehydrated. Even if you drink a lot of water, you're probably not getting enough electrolytes, and that's what's causing that to happen. But the main point is, if you're waking up to go pee, if you're waking up to get a drink in the middle of the night, that is diminishing sleep quality. That is not good for sleep quality. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so, and then in terms of like food, in terms of staying on sleep hygiene, again, if you're going to bed with a full stomach and you're still trying to digest your food, that is not good for sleep quality, because it's going to impede this ability to move through the sleep stages. So again, pretty simple rule for your last meal: have it as a minimum about 2 hours before you go to bed. Obviously, it depends on the size of the meal, but as a general rule, about 2 hours before you go to bed is probably a good idea. So you can start to see how there's different, I guess, you could say targets you could set yourself, or different rules as you move throughout the day to really set yourself for good sleep. So first one is, you know, have this consistent wake time, and then get exposed to daylight in the morning. The next one is just get plenty of daylight exposure throughout the day. Again, just find the time where you can to do that, maybe on your lunch break. The next one is going to be, you know, looking to cut out caffeine about 6 to 8 hours before you go to sleep. The next one would be, again, once it starts to get dark and about 2 hours before you go to sleep, maybe wear blue light blocking glasses. The next one would be, if you are going to drink some alcohol, limit it to, you know, maybe just one glass. And then the final one, obviously, is about an hour before you go and plan on going to sleep. Turn off your technology and go read a book instead, or go journal or whatever. And then make sure that you know that sleep time is consistent with every other day of the week. Pretty much do that routine throughout the day, and you're pretty much guaranteed for good sleep quality, because you've got very good sleep hygiene. But again, that whole sleep hygiene thing is only really truly looking at mostly the circadian rhythm side of things. We also then do have to look at the sleep pressure side of things. Again, that's where a bit more nutrition can come into it. That's where exercise can come into it. And again, as I've said, realistically, that is probably the more dominant way in which you do eventually fall asleep. Well, again, we're not talking too much about an exercise, but basically just make sure you do have some form of daily activity, because that expends the energy. And then if we start to look at nutrition, that's when we can look at how nutrition affects sleep from a biochemical perspective, but also just from a more of a, I guess, a physiological perspective as well. So I'm trying to think where I want to start with this.
I think I've got kind of the perfect place to start.
Go for it.
I think there's kind of a final kind of little point, a couple of things which I forgot to mention in regards to sleep hygiene, is also body temperature. I think is a good one to quickly throw in there.
Yeah.
And the idea that people tend to sleep a little better with slightly cooler body temperatures.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're freezing, good luck getting to sleep. But again, going back to kind of the environment side of things, also ensuring that your room is, again, potentially cooler. And I guess, again, kind of on the student side of things, one which I know a lot of people do is just get little fans for their room, because, again, kind of more affordable housing, often kind of, you always hear people complain their rooms like an oven and stuff.
Yeah.
And then another one which can sort of help with that is kind of going back to what Ben was saying about kind of how you can structure your day and stuff, is obviously, you know, then get your fans on in your room closer to sleep time, and then also nice warm shower before you go to sleep, because then that's kind of going to exacerbate the feeling of your body temperature dropping as you kind of warm up in the shower and then get out when it's and you get cooler. So those are a couple of things that quickly can tie up kind of sleep hygiene side of things. And I think kind of even before we sort of get into nutrition, I think a good one to bring up is, again, kind of on the whole structuring your day thing, and what you're saying kind of about kind of winding down in the evening is kind of the whole autonomic nervous system side of things and parasympathetic versus sympathetic state. And I guess that actually probably leads on a little more nicely perhaps into kind of mentioning the idea of obviously stress management on your sleep, and ensuring that you are kind of leaning a bit more parasympathetic. But obviously if you're watching this, then this is coming out 2 days after our first Fitbit on stress management anyway, so enjoy the Fitbits. That's just kind of a bit of like a reference point in terms of obviously stress management is important on your sleep. I don't think that we need to touch on kind of sleep pressure too much. You're completely right. I think that the basics of that is understanding that it's sort of like an energy demand that needs to be recovered from. So kind of take that as you will in terms of ensuring that you are active and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that maybe segues a little more nicely into nutrition, and kind of linking off of what you said about kind of eating before you go to bed and stuff, and ensuring that you are able to kind of digest before you go to sleep is maybe a good one, is looking perhaps at kind of carbohydrate intake and stuff like that, because I guess a good one to kind of immediately go into is kind of blood glucose and the impacts on sleep that can have. So I guess, as well as the idea of we shouldn't really eat too close to bed anyway, perhaps it's also worth kind of looking at nutrition considerations in terms of kind of carbs and impacts on blood glucose, and how you can maybe kind of structure your nutrition later on the day. I know kind of, Ben, you've mentioned stuff kind of about fructose before and stuff like that, so perhaps you kind of want to dig into kind of the carbohydrate side of things and all that, and how that can kind of impact our sleep.
Yeah, so interestingly, I was trying to decide if I should save this for maybe the advanced nutrition section, or maybe now, but
maybe like give us enough to take away and apply now, and then maybe we can dig into it nice and juicy in the advanced nutrition.
So yes, I think carbohydrates can certainly have their place on towards the night in multiple different ways. One, like you said, is looking at fructose. One, looking at, like you say, how it helps with release of serotonin, which can be converted into melatonin, which again, melatonin is that antioxidant that helps you to fall asleep. But this is where we could maybe also look and start to delve into things like chrononutrition, which essentially is a nutrition around your circadian rhythm, because there's been some pretty good research as of late showing how actually, again, eating later at nights can actually potentially disrupt sleep quality, because again, your body's not primed for food anymore. It's not, again, so blood sugar management, it's not ideal. You have a lesser ability to actually tolerate those carbohydrates. Now, do not conflict that with saying can't eat carbs after 6. Do not, no, that's not. But if we get into the real nuances of things like chrononutrition, this is where actually we could maybe make the argument for our last meal should be way before 2 hours, and how actually it could potentially be bad for sleep quality, because again, your body doesn't want the food at that time based on the light signals that are coming in. Is that getting into it a bit too much? Do most people need to worry about that? Again, probably not.
I'd imagine the impact is quite marginal.
But there is some pretty good research that's coming out on chrononutrition. So it's fascinating, actually. It is.
Yeah. That'll be a good one to delve into.
Some of that research has actually shown marginal differences, again, marginal being the key word, in body composition based on chrononutrition. But again, the reason why I say the keyword is marginal is because most people just don't need to worry about that. If you're hungry at night, if you like to eat at night, then just eat at night, for God's sakes. Like, that sort of thing. Anyway, again, that's why I didn't want to get too much into that, because it probably is left for the advanced nutrition side of things. But so, as I said, having some carbs at night is a good thing, because it helps with the serotonin release, which then can be converted into melatonin. That's really good. But the other thing is making sure to include at least one serving of fruit. The reason being is because fruit obviously contains fructose. Fructose helps to feed your liver glycogen, or your liver glycogen. And what that essentially means is as long as you've got enough liver glycogen, that can help to maintain a stable blood sugar throughout the night. Now, that's obviously something you want, because if your blood sugar drops throughout the night, again, that's your body will kind of go into almost like a panic mode, so to speak, because having a stable blood sugar is actually incredibly important for survival. So your body will essentially go into panic mode. That's going to wake you up. That's going to affect sleep quality. And again, it's going to impede this ability to move through the sleep different stages of sleep. So something as simple as putting a piece of fruit in with your final meal, or just at night, to make sure that liver glycogen is topped up, is a really, really simple trick that you can do to help with sleep quality.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And I think perhaps kind of the other main thing to look into with nutrition in regards to sleep is kind of on that note of fruit is again kind of going back to the idea of kind of sleep pathways, and I guess kind of coming back to what we always say anyway, like eat your damn fruit. Is the idea that micronutrition is very, very important when it comes to kind of sleep and stuff. Again, looking at kind of the sleep pathways, and so yeah, make sure that you're getting enough micronutrients in, and covering your vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. Which I guess is maybe are we going to talk about sleep supplementation?
I don't think there's need to. It's not really lifestyle. That's supplementation, isn't it? So
yeah, good idea. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think that covers kind of most of the sleep stuff quite nicely, because I know we're getting quite into things to say the least.
Bit of time for sleep, to be fair, but
okay.
Sleep is the most important. Like I said at the start, that's going to affect everything else. So
yeah,
that is a priority that is definitely where big focus should be.
Yeah, so I think, as you said, sleep's the one to get out of the way, because people maybe won't consider directly how sleep can have an impact on your body composition and goals. And then, as we kind of touched on in the daylight fit bit, the idea of even if the impacts directly aren't kind of that insane, then consider how lack of sleep can potentially make you more hungry, and how that can have an impact on your nutrition. Think of the impacts on performance. So yeah, sleep is 100% something which will impact everything else, and which you would do very well to get down. I think really is just a really good low-hanging fruit that people can take in terms of lifestyle and actually progressing towards their goals. I think a good one to kind of, again, just kind of draw reference to next is the idea of stress management in your life. Obviously, we ended up doing like a 3-part series of this, which will be released as Fitbits. But kind of coming off the back of sleep, where we kind of mentioned that, stress management is important in regards to sleep, is, just in terms of lifestyle in general, stress management is really key, and something which people would do well to kind of, take into account and manage as best they can. But we already have covered that, so we'll let you kind of check that out in your own time as you please. So I guess maybe the main thing now to cover in kind of the last little portion of this is maybe digestion. I think in terms of fundamentals of lifestyle, that's maybe the way to go. So kind of looking back to our fundamentals of nutrition video, we obviously raised the point that, we're not simply what we eat, but of course, what we eat, digest, absorb, and don't excrete. Mm-hmm. And that comes to the whole idea of digestion and actually being able to absorb and utilize the food that we put into ourselves. And of course, food is kind of important, so being able to utilize that food equally. So digestion, something that is quite overlooked, because again, people get caught up on the basics of nutrition, and again, that's good, that's the low-hanging fruit, 100% what needs to be ticked off first. But again, to ensure that we're actually ticking all those little boxes to, again, make this whole hypertrophy and progressing thing much more simple, is, potentially then getting a little more granular to ensure those little 1% like digestion and stuff add up, so that we are making the progress that we want. So I think one of the very kind of bad contributors to digestion right off the bat is just kind of rushing eating. And I think this is for a few reasons. Number one is kind of the lack of mindfulness and the impact that can have on your digestion, and kind of the signaling to get everything kind of working, especially kind of further downstream. And then also when it comes to kind of rushing eating, is then also inevitably that kind of comes along with kind of lack of chewing, and therefore the impact that can have. So we're now looking at this from a couple of different avenues, just kind of on the whole rushing eating type thing. And I guess quickly, actually, before I let you kind of take over, Ben, because I'm already rambling on a bit now. But again, as another little throwback to the nutrition video, the reason why we want to cover digestion in lifestyle is because, again, kind of the whole rushing eating thing and digestion as a whole links very nicely into stress management and sympathetic versus parasympathetic state and all these other kind of little lifestyle things. Whereas the nutrition side of things on digestion, we're more so just looking at things like, certain food sources may cause like some GI stress and stuff like that. But I think there's probably more to say on digestion in the lifestyle side of things than the actual nutrition side of things.
Yeah. So yes, as you said, you don't want to rush your food. You want to make sure you chew your food a minimum of 20 times or more. Realistically,
it depends on the food as well, though. That's food dependent.
Yeah, obviously. But
a piece of steak versus your cornflakes is slightly different.
Yeah. This is why I was going to say, or the real marker is just when your food is a semi-liquid in your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, you want to chew your food. That's one of the first things you need to take off is make sure you don't rush your food, chew your food, be in the moment, be present. Probably don't be distracted. Again, what I would say is probably don't be on your phone, don't watch TV, just focus on your food, eat your food. But then people think, oh, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. Again, we have to be realistic. So I'm not saying you have to do that forever. But what I'm saying is practice the mindfulness, practice chewing your food, practice being present.
Yeah.
Then, once you've got that nailed down, then you can go back to, watching something whilst doing it. But again, just make sure you don't slip into that mindless state of just, eating and watching, because that will have negative impacts on your digestion. So as you already touched on, stress is pretty key. So again, you have these two different states, sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. Obviously, you want to be in a parasympathetic state. Now, that's obviously key for digestion, but this is something now where we have to explore further to help people realize something. So, if you eat a certain food and you have poor digestion, you're going to think, well, that food doesn't agree with me. I should probably cut that food out. But actually, what can very much mimic those same symptoms, so bloating or diarrhea or whatever, is eating in a stress state. It can mimic those symptoms in an identical way. So if you think there are foods causing a problem, first I would say make sure that if you're going to do, say, like an elimination diet to find out what food potentially are causing a problem, you have to make sure you're doing it in a stress-free state. Otherwise, again, the stress is just going to mimic those same symptoms. So it might be a case of actually, no food is a problem. It might just be the case of that you are eating in a stress state. So that's, again, really key to understand, because, realistically, you don't want to cut out any foods. Like, if you cut out foods, that's when you could potentially start to miss some micronutrients, or you could just, might just be a food that you like and you don't really want to cut out. And it turns out, again, you didn't need to. It was just because you were eating in a stress state. So I think that's important to realize for that reason. So next, this is my favorite thing to do. Whenever I've given like I say, a seminar in the past, this is my absolute favorite activity to do. So I'm going to do this with the viewers at home, and I'm going to do this with you, Kev. Okay. Now, I don't want you to answer this because you might know the answer, and I don't want to reveal the answer until I've done this process. But in the comments, and Kev, just think about this. Where does digestion actually start? Pause the video, write in the comments. Okay. So, Kev. And at home, so people at home as well watching. But Kev, tell me, what is your absolute favorite food in the world?
I see where you're going with this. Probably a burger. Probably a burger.
Describe this burger to me.
Oh no! Stop! No! I know what you're doing.
Describe what you're doing. Tell me.
Oh no!
And people at home.
I know exactly what you're doing, mate. So it's the buns are lightly toasted, nice and crisp, so that they don't get soggy. It's cooked kind of medium rare, I guess. So it's like very nice and juicy. When you squeeze down those lightly toasted buns, just juice oozes out of the burger, but again doesn't soak the buns because they're lightly toasted. We've got some mayonnaise mixed with sriracha type sauce on the burger, so like typical burger sauce.
That's good.
some nice crispy fresh salad on the burger with some sweet caramelized onions. I think that's as good as I'm going to get without kind of preparing a description of my burger.
So people at home, I hope you've thought of your favorite food in the world. You're picturing yourself. Kevin, where are you eating this food? Where are you right now? Where are you eating this food?
Oh, probably.
Are you in New York? Are you in New York? You're having this burger or something?
I was just about to say probably some like old school American diner.
Yeah. So, what's happening in your mouth right now?
Watering.
Salivating. Is that happening to you at home right now? Are you salivating? You haven't even got the food in front of you. It's in your mind, and yet you are now preparing for digestion. You are salivating. Digestion begins in the brain.
Yeah.
Not in the mouth.
Which is very important to note. And I'd quickly like to actually quickly interrupt there. Also, let that be a lesson to the people who like chicken and rice, because just therefore think if you're actually including enjoyable foods and not being quite so restrictive with your meal plans, are you potentially looking at better digestion just on that consideration alone, and actually being hungrier and digesting your food better based on stuff that actually gets you more,
gets you going,
gets you ready to digest. Yeah. So just a quick one to kind of throw out there.
And it's important to understand though, because digestion begins in the brain. So again, going through that process makes you understand that if you include foods that you enjoy and foods that you generally look forward to, you're going to digest better because you're already preparing. Now, this is where we can talk about I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it's the sensual side of things, because preparing your food, cooking your food, smelling it, touching it, all those things, all those senses, it's more is going to prepare you to digest that food, because your brain's already getting you ready for it. It's expecting it to come. You're setting yourself up to digest that food so much better. Go for it.
I've got a quick one to add into there. Quickly going back to then the idea of kind of rushing your food and the chewing thing. Obviously, that kind of looks at kind of the mindfulness side of things as well, and kind of the idea that digestion starts in the brain. But then also quickly linking back to that whole rushing food thing, then also consider the impact, as you were saying, about the senses and stuff. The longer you're chewing your food, the longer your food's in your mouth, and you're actually taking note of the flavors and stuff and all that. So again, consider then how that potentially creates signaling for you to be more ready for digestion. And then obviously, combined with sort of the mechanical breakdown of food with chewing and stuff, think about how much better your digestion is going to be just with these little kind of quick tips that
because you have obviously downstream signaling from the mouth to even as far as the intestines. So obviously you kind of touched on there, you have mechanical breakdown of food, but you also have chemical breakdown of food. The chemical breakdown is more so out of your control. And so that's why, again, number one, making sure you chew your food properly takes less pressure off your digestive system as a whole. But also, again, the longer that stays in your mouth, the more prepared for digestion you are. Again, this, eating food you enjoy, being in the moment, being present, viewing food as an experience, the better chemical breakdown of food you're going to have as well. So,
well, funnily enough, what you're saying about like the chemical breakdown being a little more out of your control, but then also remember, if we are being more mindful and preparing ourselves for digestion, then we are also looking at actually salivating a bit more and stuff like that, and therefore
of course,
consider that the implications like the enzymes in our saliva and stuff like that. Then there are ways which we can certainly influence the chemical breakdown of food. And funnily enough, was it you, Ben, that during prep was watching like burger eating competitions and stuff while you were eating?
I know, so because obviously again through when you get that low body fat and you get high food focus, so everyone does this. I'm not a freak, okay? So
well, it was just coming off the top of my mind, because I thought I wonder if something like that could be it could sort of benefit, maybe like watching a video of like a burger being cooked nice and juicy or something. Maybe that could, I don't know, if psychologically perhaps that could have some sort of impact on signaling or something. Maybe
potentially, but I wouldn't recommend it, because again,
not a good idea. That's just a side note that kind of I got started on.
So so obviously again, so we've talked about being very present in the moment, being mindful, and viewing food almost as an experience, because again, how that affects your actual digestion and its chemical breakdown. We've already talked about the mechanical breakdown. So again, it's really important to understand that a mechanical breakdown first in chewing your food essentially is really, really important, because again, once it gets to the stomach, these things become, again, less in your control. It becomes more automatic. So again, the next thing we can kind of look at is making sure you have enough stomach acid. And again, this is lifestyle related, because, if you're someone who has something like you suffer from heartburn often, and you take a lot of antacids, that's going to actually cause you to have low stomach acid, which, by the way, in the long term is going to make the problem worse, because heartburn's actually not that well understood again. But as far as we're aware, what causes heartburn is actually a lack of stomach acid. So if you're temporarily bringing it down, because basically there's like this in your stomach, there's like this valve that cuts off stomach acid from obviously coming back up and burning your throat. But when it senses it's low, that valve is essentially open, and that's when you can get up. Essentially, that's kind of how it works. Mm-hmm. So by using an antacid, you're bringing stomach acid levels down, and over time that's actually going to make things like heartburn worse. But it's also going to make digestion worse as well. And what's really key there is that you have something like, for enough stomach acid to be present, you need to have sufficient levels of zinc. Now, why that's really important is because, and it's almost like a vicious cycle, if you don't have enough stomach acid, you're going to have a hard time actually breaking down the zinc that you need. So you can kind of see how that's a vicious cycle in the first place. Mm-hmm. And again, that can all start from lifestyle factors such as, chewing your food, the potential medication that you take, maybe even arguably, and again, this is very nuanced and starting to drift away a little bit, but even arguably the macronutrient breakdown of your food, because something like protein is going to increase stomach acid. So again, this is like not necessary for most people, but if you really, really want to be nuanced and really want to get that 1% from your digestion, then maybe it would be a good idea in your meal to eat your protein source first, because that's going to upregulate stomach acid, and therefore you're going to digest the rest of your food better. Again, that's just like, do you really want to live like that? Probably not. So, you don't have to.
It's worth mentioning, though. It's
worth mentioning in case you want to do that.
Decent stuff.
Yeah. And so, again, the different degrees in which you chew food, I guess we're getting onto this now, is going to be affected by the macronutrients within your meal, because again, something like protein is going to be more heavily reliant on a mechanical breakdown, mm-hmm. whereas something like your carbs are going to be still very much reliant on the mechanical breakdown, but more so on your chemical breakdown as well, because that starts in the mouth. Again, you've probably heard before, but your saliva contains what's the word? Digestive enzymes for your carbohydrates. It's called amylase. So it's, again, that starts to break down in the mouth chemically, but obviously something like protein and your fat doesn't. So,
although, as just a quick little cool fact for people on that note is, our mouths do actually contain a lingual lipase. But yes. You also brought up a cool point that doesn't actually get activated until further down.
It doesn't it doesn't get activated, so to speak, until the stomach. So yes, there is some lipase in the saliva, but it doesn't get activated till the stomach. So it's almost not. I guess it's kind of irrelevant in a sense. So again, understanding there is different mechanical chewing required for different macronutrients is, again, kind of important, just so, again, because most people, you're going to take a pretty mixed mouthful, and you might be able to feel in your mouth, even without realizing it, that the carbs are starting to break down, but your protein hasn't yet. So again, this is why just making sure you chew food until it's a semi-liquid is really, really important, because again, you just want to make sure that everything is mechanically broke down well before it goes downstream. Again, all that's going to do is relieve this pressure off the rest of your system. And again, that's going to have some real benefits. What's a very typical what's a very typical problem for, especially seems to be a lot of females, is bloating. Well, again, bloating would very much suggest that someone isn't chewing their food properly. So if you're someone that bloats a lot, that's probably what's happening.
Yeah.
Again, it's probably not, I mean, it could be, but it's not that likely that it is some sort of intolerance or sensitivity to food, because again, that's very much a scapegoat for a lot of people, is they love to say, well, it's probably just this food source, you should cut that out. Chances are you need to be more mindful, you need to eat in a non-stress state, you need to just chew your food better, you do all those things, and then just about guarantee the problem will go away over time.
Yeah, I think that actually brings up a good kind of because I think to be fair, that probably gets out kind of the main things are digestion. I think in terms of kind of lifestyle and stuff, I think the main thing to get across was the idea of kind of stress and chewing. So would you agree that that's a pretty decent place to leave off the digestion side of things, just because I'm aware we're running a bit?
Yeah, I think there is definitely more to touch on, especially from a nutrition standpoint, especially if we then start to dive into the microbiome. But
let's not do that now.
the only thing I will say for the microbiome, and this does influence by lifestyle, is that actually
fundamentals, though. Just remember fundamentals.
Yeah. I'm not going to say too much. Is that light exposure? We know light exposure can have a beneficial effect on the microbiome, and so can exercise. So both of them together, again, that's just another reason why they're important.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just gonna plug my mic in.
Well, I think what's good to kind of quickly link off from there is, I guess, the idea of hopefully this already kind of has given you ideas of the effects on quality of life and energy and everything by getting these lifestyle factors in check. But I think the idea of kind of bloating and stuff is a good way to kind of lead on to that, which I guess is where we'll kind of wrap this up. But I think a good one to kind of just go straight off the bloating is a bit of a rant time, sorry. But the idea that I hate Instagram fitness, I really do. But this idea of, because again, I appreciate body positivity, and obviously, as you mentioned, something that tends to be kind of a bit more common with females, I guess, because maybe potentially a little more conscious of how they look, is that idea of kind of bloating and stuff. And what comes along with that is a lot of these videos saying like, bloating is normal, bloating is natural, there's nothing wrong with you if you're bloating, just accept it and love your body. Like, no, bloating is bad biofeedback. That is your body literally saying to you, something's wrong, I ain't happy. So for starters, that's just a quick rant that I need to get off my chest. Stop listening to that bollocks. Bloating is a form of biofeedback. That's literally your body telling you like how it's processing stuff and if it's happy. So no, bloating is is your stomach going to fill up with food throughout the day? Yeah. Are you probably going to be a little flatter in the morning than when you go to sleep? Yeah. Is that influenced by things like carbohydrate and water retention and stuff? Yeah. But is it normal to be inflated like a balloon a few hours after you eat? No, 100% no. Stop thinking otherwise. It's bad biofeedback.
Yeah, that is an issue, because that does get pushed as like, oh well, just it's normal, it happens, accept it. Like, no, that shouldn't be happening. But actually, that leads again, very nice segue into you talked about biofeedback there, so we can then look at other signs and symptoms of poor digestion. Stomach acid, like say, if you're experiencing heartburn often or acid reflux, then yeah, that's a good sign that you've got poor levels of stomach acid or low levels of stomach acid. Like say, bloating, not a good sign. But here's a really, really easy one for everyone to track, and is a really good sign and marker of where your health is at, actually. And that is looking at your bowel movements. Such a simple thing that everyone can track. So,
both in terms of frequency and in terms of kind of the consistency, I guess. Yeah,
it's pretty obvious that obviously if you've got very loose bowel movements or you're constipated, then that is again a good sign that something is going wrong, that there is a problem there. Now, the easiest way to do it is you look at something called the Bristol stool chart and just refer to that, and then you'll know what's a good bowel movement and what's not.
Won't go too in depth though.
It's not the Bristol stool chart is very, very simple. That's what.
Yeah. But I mean, just kind of put that out there for people to investigate, just because again we're kind of running quite low on time. So I think the main thing I wanted to get across from that is consider how much better you'll actually feel controlling things like your digestion and bloating, controlling your sleep. Think about, how that is going to have such a positive effect on your energy, on your mood, on everything, on your quality of life as a whole, which is, Ben, what you were saying kind of towards the start of this video. I think that's just kind of a good place to kind of wrap up, and that idea of kind of, without going too in depth on different types of biofeedback and stuff, the idea that, you'll be able to see these things in things like, bloating, bowel movements and stuff. You'll be able to, get feedback from your body, and, feedback which is certainly going to, feel a lot better. And, again, looking at the quality of life side of things. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything you want to kind of add to the whole sort of life and quality of life and energy, and the benefits of kind of looking at this stuff and how that impacts other stuff, and then we can probably wrap up from there.
Yeah, so obviously, if you've got better sleep, if you're digesting food better, if you've got your stress under control, quality of life and energy is going to go up. If you've got better energy levels, you're going to perform better. Day-to-day life is going to be easier and just feel better. You're going to be happier, which is really key, because, again, as my two fundamentals, you've got health and you've got happiness. They're the fundamentals. If you can get good energy and good quality of life, you're going to increase your happiness. If your happiness is high, then, you're going to be more satisfied in life. Life is going to be better. You'll find that actually you have better relationship with yourself, with other people, with food. You'll have better body satisfaction. Again, if we look then how that can affect things like your actual dieting as well, you'll be more likely to succeed. Obviously, quality of life is important because, well, isn't that essentially what we're doing this all for anyways, to improve quality of life? Like, yeah, what realistically, what else is the point? Quality of life also does include longevity as well. So, obviously that's incredibly important. So again, like I say, if energy is higher, then performance is going to go up as well. If performance is going up, then results are going to go up. Again, isn't that another main reason why we do all this thing? Like, we're doing all this is to get good results. Like, obviously, again, that's something that a lot of people want. So if energy levels are nice and high, that's exactly what we want. Do I have anything else to add? I don't know. I think it's pretty self-explanatory that, that is the end goal, is to improve quality of life. And so by doing all these simple lifestyle habits, that's what you're going to achieve. And it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we've certainly covered a lot today, and hopefully given people a lot in terms of what they can apply to their life, and improve these habits and lifestyle to make better progress, just be better in general. So I guess it's kind of a final word. This has obviously been very kind of health focused in some regards. So just quick disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional. Ben is not yet a medical professional. So just take all this as advice. We're not doing this to kind of fix anything that's wrong with you. Go see your doctor. But yeah, I hope that this has kind of given you some advice that you can implement into your life. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe. And I guess that wraps up the fundamentals of lifestyle.
Yeah. Go out and live your life and just bloody enjoy it, will you? Just enjoy it.
Awesome. Yeah, nice. Thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one.
Hey, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more.
If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to check out the latest Fitbit here and the latest podcast here. Thanks for watching, guys and girls.